Reporting by the Toronto Star yesterday saying that banks could be more likely to deny mortgages to people who are working in areas threatened by tariffs. A memo indicates that lending criteria will be tightened for self-employed borrowers working in areas that include ones that we know are hit by tariffs: aluminum, steel, farming, natural resources, and manufacturing. For more on this story, we've brought in David Fleming, Toronto Realtor and Real Estate Blog author and guest of the show. Good morning.
Thank you. Good morning.
Okay, well, what do you make of this memo that highlights people who are in tariff-affected industries maybe having a tougher time getting a mortgage?
Well, there's no shortage of news out there right now, and obviously this is something that's going to affect a lot of people. I'm seeing the word deny being used. It's not so much that banks are going to deny these folks mortgages, it's that they're changing their lending criteria. And so this really is nothing new. Banks change their lending criteria all the time in times of economic stress and times of economic boom. And so really what they're saying is we want to make sure that these folks, if things get worse, can continue to pay their mortgages. Is
this something we could see affect other financial institutions?
Yeah, I think that usually there's a, one bank leads and the other banks follow. I think this is an internal memo from the Bank of Montreal that was shared. There's some mortgage brokers that are commenting on it, but ultimately the banks are doing what's best for the banks, which they should, because one of the hallmarks of the Canadian economy is that we have one of, if not the strongest banking systems on the entire planet. I understand and I'm empathetic with the folks that are affected, but we really don't want to tinker with that.
What considerations then, David, explain to us, are taken into effect before making a major change like this one? Obviously, bottom line.
Yeah, well, I mean, the banks, don't forget, like, this isn't the public sector. Yes, these are publicly traded companies, but it's a private company. Yeah. And so we saw the word self-employed in the news report. This has always been this way for people that are freelance, on contract, self-employed. I'm going to date myself here, but when I got into the business, it was always the example of the bartender that makes $6 an hour but takes home $1,000 a weekend. Right. They can't get a mortgage. So folks that are self-employed, that are contract freelance, have always been affected. We're just now seeing the word deny. I don't necessarily agree with that. And remember, this is not everybody. This is self-employed. That's what the memo said.
And also, this is for people who are applying or looking for a mortgage. Yes. Can you just reassure everybody who has an existing mortgage who may be in one of those industries or categories right now?
Yes, exactly. So remember that when you renew with your current bank, the CMHC used to force everyone to be stress tested, and people complained about that. Why am I being stress tested again when I'm renewing with my current bank? Well, the CMHC listened. They said, okay, we'll take that out. So by the same token, if you're renewing with your current bank, you don't have to go through this more stringent process. It's for new borrowers, and it's for people whose mortgage is coming up that say, maybe I'll shop around, maybe I'll change lenders. I think those folks are going to want to stay with their existing banks and get well out ahead of this.
Yeah, can you, for people who are wondering, well, what should I do? What if I work in one of those sectors and I fall into this category? How prepared should I be? What can I say if I need to get a mortgage?
Excellent question, and I would say that I renewed my mortgage last year. Amazingly, I got a phone call from my own bank 10 days before renewal, asking me if I'd like to come in and talk. I had already been speaking to my mortgage broker for a year. So if anybody is in one of these affected industries, knowledge is power. You need to start talking to your bank. Mortgage brokers don't want to turn into an advertisement for why to use a broker, but there's knowledge, there's experience. They can shop different lenders. They can lead you down the right path. I think anybody in one of these affected industries has got to start doing their research.
What about for people who are afraid that if I flag it to the bank and maybe they're not paying attention to it now, this is going to discount me as somebody who can renew or apply for a mortgage at this institution?
The banks already know. And again, as I said, one of the hallmarks of the Canadian economy is the strength of the banking system. Excuse the tangent, but in 2008, during the financial crisis, don't forget, U.S. mortgage delinquencies went from 1% to 5%. Ours went to 0.4%. We have a very strong banking industry. The banks are very aware of what's happening right now. I empathize, I sympathize with the folks being affected, but it's really tough to say, and there was a quote in that article from a labor leader saying, now's not the time to tighten the screws on these folks. I think we have to put it in context. The banks are very successful. They're good at what they do. They're holding up the Canadian economy. It's not the time to start saying, let's change lending regulations to help these folks out. I think that the banks have to work with their existing borrowers, and I think that they will.
Connecting all the beads on the chain, which is why it's really important that we hear from our federal leaders about what their plans are for people in those industries.
Yes.
So they can take that knowledge to their banks.
Exactly.
It all comes together.